Hey everyone, I'm Mary Beth McAndrews from Dread Central, and I am here today with the legendary Roger Corman. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Well, I'm happy to talk.
So, my first question for you is you have been making movies for a while, and I'm curious from your perspective, how has the horror genre changed?
Uh, the horror genre has changed, not necessarily for the better. Uh,
Oh,
when I was making, say, the Edgar Allan Poe pictures and so forth,
yeah.
the uh, the killings, the horror sequences were done to a certain extent by indirection. Uh,
Uh-huh.
Somebody got the idea of adding to the horror by cutting somebody's wrist off. The next director said, well, if he can cut the wrist off, I'll cut him off at the elbow. And that has proceeded. And so we're seeing a kind of, this doesn't apply to all films, but to
Yeah.
some horror films, we're seeing rather brutality rather than horror. But on the other hand, there are some very good horror films being made.
What are some of your favorite recent horror movies that you've seen that you really have enjoyed?
I don't remember any horror film. I have to go back to the film Nightmare on Elm Street, which was
Oh,
the
really?
last film I saw that I thought was completely original. The idea that your nightmares could kill you. I thought this is a real breakthrough. Uh, I never thought of it. Nobody else ever thought of it. Think that was the last brilliant film I've seen.
Wow. And so what's the scariest movie you've ever seen? Or yeah, what's the scariest movie you've ever seen?
Probably The Shining with Jack Nicholson.
Really? Oh, it but really is a classic, terrifying movie. I saw that way too young. I saw it when I was very young. So here we are. So going back to kind of a lot like your Edgar Allan Poe films. What was it like working with Vincent Price? And you so many movies with him. So what was he like to work with?
Uh, my experience with Vincent was very good. I had developed the script with Dick Matheson, the writer for The House of Usher. And from the beginning, my first choice was Vincent. Uh, the lead in The House of Usher was a highly intelligent, distinguished New England gentleman who was a little bit crazy. And I thought Vincent was a very distinguished and actually a very highly intelligent man. Uh, and he could give us that hint of craziness that I was looking for. And so I sent him the script. He sent back word he'd like to meet with me. Could we have lunch? And I said, fine. And he asked me what my take was on Usher, and I told him, and he said, that's essentially what my take is. And so we were on the same page. Uh, I've heard of directors fighting with actors, and it's almost always interpretation. The actor has one thought, the director has another thought. Now, I get around that by meeting extensively with the actor and rehearsing as much as I can before the actual shooting. We did that with Vincent, and everything went very smoothly. And I don't remember how many Poe films I made, maybe 6 or 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I got along with Vincent very, very well.
That's amazing. He's just an incredible actor and he seemed like a really cool guy to work with. And you also produce a lot of movies. So how do you choose a film to get involved with and help produce in any way?
What happened was this: I had I've been making a lot of pictures for American International,
Mhm.
and they wanted me to make another Poe film. And I said, I'm just starting to repeat myself. Poe films that we've always shot in the studio. I said, I want to go out into the streets and shoot
Mm.
what's going on. And they said, what do you want to shoot? And I said, the Hells Angels are very big right now. And I think they really do have a cultural significance. And so they agreed for me to make the Wild Angels, which turned out to be at the time the biggest low budget picture in history.
Oh,
It was
wow.
then broken by a bunch of guys who had worked with me who made Easy Rider. But anyway, for the moment, we were the highest grossing film. And I had always had perfect relationships with AIP. They send you your distribution report, your percentage of profits, and so forth. And I realized, how shall I phrase this? Frankly, they were cheating me. Why beat around the bush? They were cheating me. And I got into a big dispute, and we finally settled it. And then
Mhm.
I did a follow-up again with Peter Fonda, the trip about an LSD trip. And it did almost as well as the Wild Angels. And they cheated me again. And I thought, the only way to avoid this is for me to stop being essentially a director, producer, and have my own production distribution company, because I don't plan on cheating myself. And so I formed New World Pictures.
Yeah.
My plan really was to take a year off from directing, because I'd been just worn out where I've been directing so many pictures so
Yeah.
fast, and set it up and then turn it over to my brother to produce, and a friend of mine who knew distribution, Larry Woolner. Well,
Mhm.
it turned out my brother signed a contract to be head of uh, television producing for Fox for a whole lot of money. And so there was nobody to fill that post but me. So I gave up directing and started producing. And we had to do what we used to call feed the dinosaur. Our distribution arm, New World Pictures, had to have, I figured out, an optimum of 12 pictures a year, one picture every month, to function efficiently.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's when I finally gave up directing and became a producer.
Wow. That's incredible. And so what was your process in I mean, I can only imagine how many movies came across your desk. What was kind of your thought process when you were picking these movies to help put your support behind?
My thought process, was, the audience is very heavily skewed to young people,
Mhm.
teenagers and 20s and so forth. And the major pictures, major studios were making films with a 40-year-old leading man and a 35-year-old leading lady, because they were stars and it took that long to
Yeah.
become a star. And I thought, if I just deliberately program against them and make films starring teenagers, written and directed, although I was involved in the writing, by not teenage, but early 20s
Yeah.
directors, I can hit directly into the market I'm looking for.
Oh, cool. Oh, that is very smart. And my last question for you is, do you have a favorite movie that you have ever directed or you were surprised that you were able to get it made?
Well, I would pick two.
Okay.
One is The Intruder, which was a
Okay.
picture about discrimination in schools in the South. It got wonderful reviews, and it won a couple of minor film festivals. and it was the first film I ever made that lost money.
Oh no.
Although I have to say, I used to say it lost money, but in the early I made it in 1960. In the early 2000s, Bill Shatner and I did a narration for it, an introduction, and we finally broke even, I think 45 years after the picture was. The other
Hey,
one,
eventually it happens.
and the other one I would pick would be Mask of the Red Death, which I thought was probably the best of the Poe films, and it had the biggest look because my films had been doing very well in England, and the English distributors asked me to make with AIP a Poe film in England, and which I did. And what Dan Haller and I, Dan was my art director, we would always go to the scene dock, which is where they store the best flats from previous pictures. We went to the scene dock and we saw all the flats for A Man for All Seasons. And we thought, you get gold here. So Dan used those scenes flats and then designed new ones. And we got the biggest and best looking and possibly the best of the Poe films.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, Roger, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about your career. I really appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you.